Great. I'm very excited to introduce Nicole, who's going to be leading our next section. Nicole is with Carbon Better and one of our founding partners for the Carbon Newbie Summit. And we have this really nice transition from sort of individual and consumer action now focused more on the professional and corporate side. So with that, I'm going to pass it to Nicole.
Thank you. All right, and with that, I'd actually like to welcome to the stage Anna Lerner and Sarah Beth Broccoli. Anna's with the Climate Collective, and Sarah Beth is with NASDAQ. And to open up the professional session today, we really wanted to give a lay of the land of what is happening in the space. So as you might know, with your presence here, the sustainability space has evolved and emerged and changed a lot, even in the last couple of years. So we really want to talk about why is sustainability important for businesses before later in the programming digging into concepts around carbon accounting as well as carbon offsetting. So thank you, Anna and Sarah Beth, for joining me today. So to start, Sarah Beth, I have a question for you. In your view, when companies are trying to scale or maintain their operations, just keep the lights on, right? Why is it important for them to care about sustainability and their carbon impacts? Why does it matter?
I appreciate the question because I don't know if anyone's been following publications in CDR anything this week, but Bain, Rubicon Carbon, BCG, all the luminaries have all published their seminal research on where the CDR buyer off-takers are moving into.
And what is CDR for the audience? For some of the newcomers
carbon
that
dioxide
might have
removal.
missed
Thank you
it
for
this
asking.
morning.
Yeah, so the opportunity for us to reach a certain amount of decarbonization by 2030, a magic number that exists still in the near but distant future, and how do we really incentivize maybe less ambitious companies to reach the more ambitious companies of reaching those CDR, carbon dioxide removal targets. And I typically, by way of introduction, I head out a carbon market portfolio at NASDAQ where our ESG advisory team answers these questions pretty consistently along large market players, so above that $2 billion market cap size, and then more and more so, ones that we know will move the needle are the ones that are below that $2 billion market cap size. The types of questions that we're getting about CDR are exactly that. What is it? And is it something that we should put forward into our budget cycles for the next few calendar years? Typically, the things that I usually front on the first aspect is, have you done a greenhouse gas assessment? Cool, it's nice to know because that's a immediate tool for us to move forward to see if CDR is even in their future. And then certainly to move into what are knowns between science-based target setting and looking at what scope 1 and scope 2 and scope 3 emissions can and should be. So that's kind of like the lay of the land. The type of vernacular that we get started with is really at that base level. Have you started an assessment? And then we go from there.
And we'll dig into how that math works later. Thank you, Sarah Beth. So Anna, why is it important for companies to actually disclose their impact? So maybe they're quantifying their carbon footprint, maybe they're actually taking action, but why is it important for corporates, brands, any company to actually tell people what they're doing? And then if you could also touch on if there's any risks to disclosing what you're doing.
Very good questions, thank you. Yeah, so nice to meet you all. My name is Anna Lerner. I am the CEO of Climate Collective. Really happy to be here. Why is it important? This is sort of a trend that we're seeing. Many years ago, this notion of climate and social development, social responsibility was amongst a small group of companies who cared. Maybe the more well-resourced companies or the ones that had kind of a pioneering leader. Today, it's much more mainstream. I'm still not going to say it's completely mainstream. We're far from completely mainstream. But it's not just kind of the big tech companies in Silicon Valley that talk about net zero commitments anymore. You have a whole tail of small to medium-sized companies that are seeing this as a business opportunity. So first of all, why does it matter? Why are they doing this? I think there's two different concepts that are worth keeping kind of a little bit separate. In some cases, particularly when we talk about ESG, it's often related to compliance reporting. So there's a lot of regulatory compliance reporting requirements particularly in the United States, but also in the European Union, and beyond. There are new regulations, new policies that are coming in place, I mean, monthly, I would say. Most recent one was probably last week when the European Union first banned that anyone uses the term carbon neutral for their products, and then also has this new rule that anyone that's importing goods to the European Union need to be able to say or point to the carbon footprint of that product. So we have the compliance piece, and then we also have the more kind of, I want to be a leader, I want to brand myself as green, and actually the previous panel covered that really well. But I think those are kind of the big pieces, and the reality is if you don't measure what your carbon footprints are, or even if we think about sort of net zero claims, we have scope 1, scope 2, scope 3, which I hope someone will talk about in future panels.
We got you covered.
Amazing. But if you don't really know what your emissions are up and down your value chain, then you can't really come with a credible claim, and particularly when it's compliance, but also when it's customers. Customers are more informed today. I mean, we're all here to learn about these terms, be able to use them. So I think, yeah, there's a dual push, both kind of a regulatory and a voluntary effort to be more transparent.
Awesome, thank you, Anna. Sarah Beth, you actually touched on a couple of these things in our first question, but I wanted to see beyond CDR and doing your carbon footprint as a corporate and reporting, what are some other examples of actions that businesses are taking to be leaders in their space from a sustainability perspective? And are there any corporates that you would like to highlight as like front runners in this space? No pressure.
Will I get paid if I endorse them? Yeah, I mean, it's a great question, and to, again, by way of background, my portfolio at NASDAQ is about 40 companies that range from regional banks all the way to baby biotech companies up to large, who should not be named, conglomerate manufacturers. So the scope is wide, the breadth is deep, and I think the pieces that we see as those best practices starting to emerge are certainly within, like, some of the things that Anna was highlighting, is that there is a particular methodology and step-by-step piece that corporates do, but then when you think about as an individual, that you also can mimic getting to that kind of greenhouse gas total of what your footprint is. So individual, yes, corporation, similar types of processes. Sorry, I realize I'm not even talking to this side of the room. Hello. One thing that is incredibly encouraging to me is the number of ambitious individuals starting to set in, like, entrepreneur, setting greenhouse gas targets at the company, whether it's for a net zero target or really just trying to understand how small their scope 1 and scope 2 is so that they can figure out scope 3 later, but still publish 1 and 2 in the ESG report because that's great branding and you're doing something. I was on a panel at Climeworks early today, and we were discussing how many companies, US and European, had actually set science-based targets in their reports, and it's quite interesting, 5,000 worldwide. But when you think about how many companies actually exist, that's actually a very tiny number, and it is representative, I think, of, what was it, 0.5, and that broke my heart. But it's all on this trending aspect that it's now dinner table, kitchen level conversation that we see as opportunities for people who engage in facilities management, energy management, outside of the CSO mandate, to start setting these types of trajectories as a part of their job. I didn't get to see that when I was graduating from uni. That job didn't exist. So we're seeing people educated from the university level that are excited to go and to be carbon accountants. Woo, that's a dry job. But if you are interested, we're hiring for that. 2 places at NASDAQ. Please talk to me afterwards. I get money and you get money. But it's like, I think it's a tremendous signal that people are smarter, they're asking better questions, and those are the exact type of assets that we want working at Fortune 500, 1,000 companies.
Definitely. Thank you, Sarah Beth. And I think a theme that you'll see both in the morning sessions as well as in this afternoon is that, like, it's important to get started. Wherever you're at, if you haven't started yet, like, the time is now. And if you're already started, like, keep making momentum. To close out our carbon imperative, and I'd love for you to maybe touch on an emerging kind of buzzword in the space, which is green hushing. What is it? Why should we avoid it? And, you know, especially in relation, I think we see greenwashing thrown around a lot, but green hushing is newer. And
Yes, this is really important. And this is, I center a lot of my own kind of climate advocacy around this notion. So Greenwashing, obvious, right? You all get it. Like some companies are pretending to do something, or they're sponsoring like a little project with a cute little kid, and they're putting it front and center on their website, and they pretend to be really good, but actually, like, if you really look under the hood, what they're investing in, or maybe where they're operating in, or even the working conditions of in their factories are not as great, right? But they, that's established. We've had social washing before, so this is not a new concept. Green hashing is fairly new, though. So in a recent study by a group called South Pole last year, they found that out of the 1,200 companies that had quite substantial carbon market presence, or in other ways were investing a lot in climate or net zero pledges, 25% of them, a quarter, chose to not talk about this at all. They wouldn't want to talk about this publicly because they're afraid of being called out for maybe not the perfect carbon credit that they purchased, or maybe not the perfect partner that they had, and then the due diligence only got them so far. So this is super important. Out of the 6,000 companies you talked about that have a science-based target initiative, it's only 32 that have actually tried to buy carbon removals. Carbon removals will be really, really important in the future. They're currently very expensive. I can't afford them. But it's going to be important. And there's only 32 out of those 6,000. So this is the same with green hashing. We should keep everyone under a very high standard, yes. But let's celebrate the ones who are trying. I'm so frustrated. I was hoping you would mention Apple in your question just now. I'm so frustrated that people are bashing Apple about this video they did, and they say it's ridiculous and like so stupid, and Tim Cook
my
looks
internal
ridiculous.
team bashed it on
Come
Teams, and I was like, stop
Like,
it, you snarky people.
It's great that Apple is doing this. It's literally amazing that they're trying, they're pushing ahead. They have a product now that is with evidence, with data, carbon neutral. So let's celebrate the ones who are trying. Let's keep them to high standards, but let's not increase the number of companies that are green hushing, so nervous to be called out about the good job they're doing in climate, so they actually stop talking about it.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And with that, we're actually going to wrap up this session, but I appreciate the dialogue, and I'm excited to hear more later today.